Welcome back one final time to our Line Opinion panelists. With the largest fire in New Mexico history burning right now, the state is taking new precautions to help prevent future fires. Starting Thursday morning yesterday, the U.S. Forest Service instituted Stage 3 fire restrictions. That means all lands, roads, and trails within the Mount Taylor, Mountain Air, and Sandia Ranger districts in the Cibola National Forest are now closed, along with the entire 1.6 million acre Santa Fe National Forest. Merritt, it seems sort of inevitable, but does it send an important message, if nothing else?
Absolutely, and it had to be done. And of course, it's ironic. I was struck by, of course, there was a Washington Post article yesterday about the fires. And what struck me is in that article, unconfirmed reports that the Hermits Canyon or the large fire was caused by a prescribed burn. I'm like, where have you been, Washington Post? Everyone's saying this. The governor is saying this. This is why we have a state of emergency declared before it's even over. And so how it's looked at it through the national lens. And of course, I think unconfirmed reports means the Forest Service isn't admitting it yet.
Right.
We've got a humanitarian crisis that really boggles the mind. 15 to 18,000 people displaced. That's a tremendous number. 1,000 to 1,500 structures destroyed. This is very different than the Whitewater Baldy fire that was largely in uninhabited areas of the Gila, so it could just be allowed to burn itself out. This is going to take tremendous manpower and effort, and it is not expected to stop burning until July when the monsoons come. So yes,
which could bring flood danger too. We could go right
Exactly.
from one disaster to another.
Exactly. It's a very fragile time. I did appreciate the Washington Post story picking up on the cultural aspects and the generations of livelihood lost with that, because some of our oldest settlements are in the area and the path of the fire. But the forest closures, I think, were inevitable. We've had them before. I think everyone is seeing this, and I hope we will see more caution and more restrictions to come, honestly.
Flip side of that, Laura, we had a series of fires that were set in the Bosque earlier this week here in Albuquerque, and Mayor Tim Keller said that he is intent on keeping the Bosque open for, if no other reason, than there are other people in there to catch these things early, to maybe help self-police. Is there an argument to be made that that would be good for the National Forest too, or is it just too big and too catastrophic a thing to keep it wide open?
Well, I certainly think the scale of things is very different. I mean, the Bosque is it's much smaller by comparison, and so you're just not seeing the same level of risk to life and to property as well as to wildlife. In the Bosque, with these, even with a small number of fires that were set, they were able to be contained very quickly. And a large part of that is because so many people use the Bosque for recreational purposes. When you're talking about the larger fires that have taken hold of the state, you're just talking about a scale of magnitude that makes it much more difficult to get people in and out of there if they're in harm's way. And with the winds, those fires spread a lot faster than anyone can predict. So I do think that there's a big difference there. But on balance, I think it's important to recognize that this is an extreme move. Definitely, ratcheting up the importance of this to close down our national forest. I think, especially as we head into the summer, a lot of people look to that for recreation. But it sends an important signal to everybody that we have to do everything we can to make sure that we're able to have forests in the future, that we're able to contain our wildfires. And be responsible about the way that we use some of those lands. So I think it's the right move for the Forest Service to do.
Dan, the governor spoke with President Biden earlier this week, invited him out to see the damage from the Hermits Peak Calf Canyon fire. And the president said he did plan to come visit, but we don't have a date yet. Do you think that publicity will help with the humanitarian crisis that Merritt mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I think it would be appreciated, and I'm told it is, likely at some point he will come out. I don't know if that would obviously um, remedy some of the really serious issues these folks are dealing with, who've had to evacuate, who have lost their homes, their livelihoods, animals, things like that. But I think, this is the biggest fire currently burning in the country. I think there's still, you mentioned the flooding. I mean, there's a lot of questions about watersheds, damage to, places like those that these people really rely on, and still the fire is burning. I mean, we haven't even fully extinguished it yet. So I think a presidential visit would show, the seriousness of this issue, and I think it, raises the question, certainly in my mind, whether this is going to be kind of the new normal every year for New Mexico, kind of seeing these fires earlier and earlier in the year, and forest closures, for a large part of the summer. I mean, that they're tough on a personal level. We love getting out and hiking, but I think looking at it from the big picture and what can be done to try to prevent this type of thing from becoming a routine every year occurrence.
Merritt, there's no doubt that the governor has been aggressive on many fronts. Another thing she did this week is call on the federal government to cover 100% of the costs related to the wildfires. Normally, under federal disaster declarations, states end up paying about 25%, but because, as you mentioned, the governor reminded that this apparently started as a prescribed fire from the U.S. Forest Service. So her claim is that they should be fully responsible. Is that a fight you think she can win?
This reminds me of the release of mine effluent in southwestern Colorado a few years back by the Department of the Interior. I mean, this is again, to me, a huge gaffe at the national level. And the governor in the state and the people of northeastern New Mexico have every right to be angry. And I think the cap from FEMA is $39,500 for home damages when 5 generations of your estate has burned to the ground. That's not enough. I think the politics are on the right side. I think it's possible. This is winnable, and certainly, I think I have an emotional stake in this, as I think everyone in New Mexico does. I think New Mexico's in the right on this one.
We've also heard the Governor Laura, of course, call again for municipalities to ban fireworks sales because, again, she does not have the authority to do that herself, at least as far as the law stands right now. We have seen some areas do that, but should that just be a given at this point too? Like, what are communities waiting for on that front, do you think?
Absolutely. I was really surprised when I first relocated back to New Mexico after law school that we didn't have a ban on fireworks. It's kind of shocking because I lived, I went to undergrad and grad school in Arizona, and it was just known that you didn't have fireworks. There were displays that were still put on by municipalities, and they were, there was just a lot more safety involved. And so it's really surprising that there is not that same level of importance and urgency in New Mexico with regard to fireworks. And, every 4th of July, those of us with pets know, people tend to, it's not really a day, it's like a month or 2 months worth.
Yeah, I was going to say, not just the 4th of July.
Yeah, it happens a lot. And it's just too dangerous all the way around. So I'm glad that she came out with an executive order. I think it was April 25th when she asked, urging the local municipalities to come out with their own bans under the Fireworks Licensing and Safety Act. But I think some of those local communities are a little reluctant because they do get business. They get GRT as a result of that when there's sales of fireworks in their area. You get a lot of out-of-state companies coming in, so it generates some additional economic benefit. But I think they have to weigh that with the cost of potentially having the loss of property and potential loss of life from an uncontrolled fire. So I think the time has come for them to seriously consider a ban.
Yeah, if we're facing a new normal, that may just be part of it as we move forward. Well, thanks again to our entire line panel, joining us always virtually on Zoom. Be sure to let us know what you think about any of the topics we talked about. on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram pages.